What is up, Thrive fam? CJ Finley here again with another episode of the Thrive on Life podcast. And today I have here with me Matt Williams, founder of FroPro, badass bar out of Florida. And we have him here in Austin, Texas for a little bit. So I had to snag him. Thank you for coming through on a Saturday. I appreciate you. How are you doing today?
I feel great, man. Thank you again for having me, and always great to see you guys and connect. And it doesn't matter what day it is. I'm happy if I'm asked and get to come on a cool show and chop it up with some awesome humans. And you being the awesome human running the show, nothing but grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, I was watching one of your things and your wife gets on you for saying awesome too much.
I do say awesome, awesomely, triumphant, amazing, stellar. I try to mix those words up, but yeah, awesome comes on. It comes out of my mouth a lot.
I like it.
Yeah.
Positive vibes attract positive tribes.
That's true. That's true.
We're going to get right into this today. And something that hits home with me with your story is this August will be 2 years sober from alcohol for me. And for you, May 17th of 2010 started your journey. So you're coming up on 13 years.
It's crazy.
So one of the first, congrats on that.
Congrats to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I want to get into is you were mentioning on one of the talks that you had given prior that we all have character defects and flaws. We're humans.
Correct.
When it comes to being unsober and having an addiction or being an alcoholic, what were some of the character defects in your life that you saw within yourself that led to that in the first place?
I think number one I talk a lot about is fear. And it's just kind of that fear of the unknown or fear of losing something. And again, this is stuff that I know now, right? Like fear of losing something that I have or think that I have, or fear of not getting something that I think I want. So fear is a big character defect for me. But a lot of the other things that associate kind of stem from that, that unjustified rage or anger that I think is in everybody. And it's like, am I going to feed that today? I always tried hard not to let that out. Sadness. And again, these are things are just emotions, but they're all associated with fear. So I'm just kind of trying to describe that, because when you boil down to it, it comes down to fear. And again, that's coming from learning in sobriety. So yeah, my unsober activities like manipulation, lying, cheating, stealing, things that I wasn't raised to do, and things, I have a great family, great parents, 2 older brothers that, I'm the only one in my family like me that stepped over a line that once I crossed that line, I just couldn't come back without help from something greater than myself, and a community of people that had solved or were currently solving that problem in a fellowship and other ways. So there's a lot of ways to get sober, and there's a lot of things that drive people to get sober. And I think one of the hardest things, and it's different for everybody, because I've heard a lot of really tragic things in sobriety about people's stories, and they're there to tell it. And for me to be like, wow, I'll just gladly take my problems that I thought were problems back after hearing some things. But again, everybody, we were talking before the show, everybody's reasons for doing things are different, and everybody gets to a place different, and it's your journey. So I think the defects that kind of like came through me were that I didn't want anybody to see who I really was. Like my ego was really large, and I was like, I was successful at certain things, and I allowed those things to, again, like dictate who I was. Like, I was a teacher, a coach, and like all these things. And I went to grad school, and I thought if I did all these things and I checked these things off, now looking at it, it was I really enjoying it? I really did, but I also didn't. I didn't give a shit about it.
Yeah, you can curse. Go ahead.
Okay. Like, I was
Be your authentic self.
Yeah, I just, it was one of those things where I truly didn't appreciate it, and I thought I deserved it. So there's that entitlement too. And I think an entitlement defect for me, again, wasn't raised that way, but I got to a point where I was like, I'm working so hard, and like this is for me. I deserve this because of. And that's not a really good place to be, because there's no gratitude there. No gratitude lives in entitlement or fear or resentment. And then, as I say, to round that off in the unsober, I was very resentful of people. So rather than having a conversation with you, if I had an issue with you, I would create all these crazy conversations in my head, and then I'd start to believe them. And meanwhile, you probably weren't even thinking about it or didn't even affect you. And then I'd be even double pissed if I did bring it up, and you'd be like, well, dude, what are you talking about? I'm like, I've been raging over this for blah, 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 or whatever the reason was. So yeah, I think a combination of a lot of defects that required a lot of work and a lot of looking at and a lot of awareness and a lot of people that had worked on that in their lives to say, hey, it sounds like you're experiencing this. Can I give you a suggestion? And before getting sober, I'd be like, you can go fuck your suggestions, even though I knew I wanted it. because I was going to figure it out because of my ego. I deserved to figure it out because I was entitled, again, just a little prick. And I had so much fear and anxiety of being right or being wrong or being successful or failing. I just was just like stuck in that like perpetual cycle of like not being real, right? And anytime someone got close and kind of started like, I see, like they could kind of see who I was, I would either steamroll over them and kind of try to blow up the relationship and then
That way you don't have to deal with it.
right, and then manipulate to be like, well, it's your fault.
Yeah.
And turn the tables back on them. And it's like, again, none of this was taught to me. It was just the way I learned how to deal with my ability not to stop drinking and drugging and kind of living in that fearful place of like, you're going to find out who I really am. I'm resentful at you because you probably have something I want or I think I need, and I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to ask you how to get it because of my ego. And there's just so many things, so many defects that like pile up, and I think drive a lot of people, whether you're an alcoholic or not, or an addict or not, that drive a lot of people in that cycle. Like a lot of people, like again, like stay in jobs or do things that they think they're supposed to because that's the script that they were given. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and something you said at the very beginning of your response there, which I want to kind of dig a little further on this, is a lot of people don't speak about their problems because there's a lot of like massive trauma shown to the world now. Like on social media, you can find a lot of massive issues that people have had, whether it's like cancer or they lost a loved one, or there's certain things that we then validate like, oh, it makes sense that that person has a problem because like something extremely traumatic happened to them. But I'm a data guy. I'm a like numbers guy by default. And the reality is like, that's actually a rarity. Just because we see it more through social media doesn't mean that it's like every single person goes through that. The majority actually are like silently suffering. And that's where I want to speak to that, because there's people out there that they don't have a job that they love. They're not in a community that they love. They are leaning into those defects that you're talking about, but they don't even recognize that it's a defect.
Right.
And they're just getting by right now. And what I look at it like is like they're cars that are revving their engine on the red line. Can you do it? Yes.
Yeah.
But you only have a finite amount of time before something really bad happens. And in your life, fortunately, but unfortunately, the bad event didn't cost a life, didn't cause something extremely traumatic, but it did cause you to course correct.
Right.
So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the day that you actually got pulled over and what was going through your mind during that. Because for me, I think of it like this, like me and my friends, that could have been any one of us that gets pulled over for DUI, DWI.
Right.
If you haven't gotten into that scenario and you were a drinker, we all could, it was like flipping a coin, whether it was going to happen. So I don't know what it was like because I flipped a coin and I got lucky. But on your end, what was that experience?
So I was a major consequence guy, and like those consequences didn't really do anything. Cause like, again, being somewhat of a people person and knowing a lot of people, a lot of the times it was like a slap on the wrist, or I knew the right person that would get me out of it, and I would kind of skate away. And I learned that very early on. And like the crazy thing is I came from a small town and everybody knew each other. So if like you got in front of the judge, it was like, oh, so-and-so that used to coach their kid in baseball. And they'd be like, hey man, looks like what I'm looking at here is like pretty serious, but like, I know you and I know, you probably made a mistake. And I'm like, yeah, it's a mistake. Yeah, cool. And let me go. Didn't really serve me at the time. At the time it served me. And I thought again, wow, like this is all I have to do. And that's like, I learned how to manipulate and use people, which is a terrible thing. Before I get into that, I do want to say one thing is, again, you're about to be a father, so congratulations. And we're talking about doing things in the process of doing things and then saying, I'm doing this because, like, when my father passed away, right, I was 26. The reality is I was the youngest son of 3. Everybody was suffering. And what did I do? I got completely drunk. And then I went home and held myself together to be a part of the family. And when I left that situation a couple of days later, what did I do? I went and got completely drunk. And when people are like, hey man, are you okay? I'm like, you drink like this if your dad just died. So how selfish and self-centered I was. I was there for my mom. I was there for my brothers and everybody that came in, because my dad was an amazing man and helped a lot of people in the community, and was just one of those guys, was super quiet, never yelled. Like when he talked to you, he would talk like this. So you'd really have to listen, and he would talk low. So like, those are the things. Like, you asked me the first question, I'm still in that defect of like how selfish and self-centered that is before you actually have an awakening, right? So the awakening, and I don't remember a lot from that night because I was way, way, way over the limit. I remember crashing my car. I remember some yelling happening at me. I didn't know, I had hit somebody. It was the first time, like you said, there have been many coin flips where nothing happened. And there was no like skating out of trouble, but nothing happened. Or like I came to before crashing into a wall or before doing something else. But that last moment and that last day, which was May 15th of 2010, because I take 2 days because I had so much stuff in my system. But I just remember kind of getting out of my car. And again, driving a Jeep Wrangler soft top, no doors on the car, in Florida, coming from a pool party, half naked, wearing board shorts and sandals. And I just sat on the side of the road and waited to get arrested. I didn't run. I was like exhausted, and probably wouldn't have gotten very far, because I had definitely crashed cars before and like tried to hide and like in plain sight. And people are like, excuse me, sir, it's 3 a.m. Is that your car on fire? Is that your car that you just crashed? You're the only one here. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's weird. Weirdly enough, that's who I am. But I remember going to the nice little Boca like lockup, and then them basically saying, yeah, you're not going there. You're going to Gun Club. And Gun Club is a prison in Florida overlooking a golf course. And I remember kind of coming in and out of consciousness, because it was just really bad, right? And when you come in and out of this, I'd been locked in drunk tanks and like slept on like floors and benches. But it was the first time it was like very humiliating, where it was like I was standing next to 3 or 4 other, I think it was 4 other gentlemen. We were stripped completely because we were going in to general population, stripped completely, searched every possible way, given a jumpsuit, and then walked into general population. First time for me. And I had seen it before, and like, like the Scared Straight stuff, and I've seen the videos. And I remember one time in Virginia, I got into, I was in the drunk tank, and they walk you by the guys that are locked in there and that are there for a long time. And it was like, man, like, what's happening? And it was the first time that, again, I share this anytime when I kind of came to, and it was, I think it was like the 16th. Yeah, it was the next day, and I kind of came to, and like, it's like my eyes were closed and I could hear stuff. And I was like, if you've ever been in a place where like, man, I hope this is a dream. And when I open my eyes, I'm not where I am. And I remember coming to like the dried tears, the snot, fortunately I didn't cut myself too bad, but I was like, the sweating, like I just was like a puddle of a human. And I just kind of was just like, man, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I need help. And I said those words out loud. And first time I'd ever said that, and it was weird because the result of that ended me getting in front of the judge, and like, you walk through this whole thing, and this guy looked at me and he goes, you look like you've had enough. And no one ever said that to me. And, and like, I couldn't really look at him in the eye like I can look you in the eye today. And I was like, oh yeah, sir, yeah, I have enough. He goes, there's some people that came here to, like the movies, they like tried to bail you out. So obviously you have a lot of people that care about you. And I was like, yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Uh-huh. He's like, I'm going to, based off what I'm looking at here in the last 10 years that I know about, it looks like you have a long road ahead of you, and I'm going to release you on your own recognizance, R-O-R. And I was like, okay. Like, he's like, you'll be out of here in a little bit. And he goes, I hope you take advantage, along the lines of, I hope you take advantage of this opportunity. And, I hope I don't have to see you again in my courtroom. Along those lines. And I remember I left, and I had made one buddy while I was in there, and it was like a guy, and I was sitting with this guy in general population, and he was just like probably like 10 or 15 years older than me, and like he had been there before. And I listened to him talk about his mom coming to bail him out, and at the time I was 28, And he was probably in his mid 40s. And he's like, yeah, my mom's coming to pick me up. I got in a bar fight and beat this guy's ass. And I was drunk, and it's not the first time. So I've done this a bunch. And I was just like, and I wasn't a fighter or anything like that, but I was like, wow, this is me. If I don't get my shit together, either going to die or I'm going to be this guy. And I don't want to be this guy. But when I got out, we got out at the same time. I borrowed his phone, and I called a buddy of mine who I knew was sober. And I said, hey, man, just getting out of gun club. I'm an alcoholic, man. I need some help. And he was like, no shit. He goes, I've been waiting for this phone call. I was like, I don't know what to do. He's like, all right, what do you need? I was like, well, the girl I'm dating, she's going to come pick me up. Maybe can you call my mom? Or no, don't call my mom. And I'm going to call my brother. And he's like, okay. He's like, I'll see you when you get back. And it was crazy. Like I called my brother. And these are people that love me unconditionally, but like kind of were starting to love me from afar. And they're like, hey, Uncle Matthew, hey, Matthew, we love you. But, when you're doing the things that you do, it's really tough to be around. And I was that guy. And I was that guy that, was a super nice guy, and we could do this. But the minute I put a substance into my body, I had no off switch. So it was like not an everyday thing, but it was like, I share this all the time. If you and I were drinking right now, I could sit here with you and drink probably till tomorrow. But the minute I would get up and leave this environment where we are now, and I would go somewhere else, that's when it would hit. And then I would black out and end up wherever I'd end up until my body stopped. And it's a weird place to be, and a very scary place to be, because a lot of the things that happened in my life, like I said, like you said, coin flip. So a lot of the times the coin flipped, and it was a consequence. A lot of times I got away with it. And I think that last moment of when you get to a point of just complete and utter bottom, as they would describe it, right? I'd had, financial issues here, legal issues here, familial issues here, girlfriend issues here. But when all of it comes together in one shot, and they're basically like, because of your alcoholism or your drinking, you're going to lose a lot of things. One of them might be your freedom for 1 to 3 years. And I was like, because I drank and drove, I'm going to end up in prison. Like, is that a real thing? And they're like, the amount of times and things that you've done over the last 10 years, that equals what you're looking at. And I was like, man. And it was the first time I asked for help. That was the first time I actually listened to suggestions. It was the first time that like those defects didn't drive my life, if that makes sense, because like they weren't functioning and serving me. And I was at a point of being like, okay, this hasn't worked. My way has never worked. I am now willing to A, ask for help, B, literally do whatever you tell me to do, because I don't want to feel this way. And the way I wanted to, the way I felt was not wanting to be on the planet anymore. And I know that sounds like pretty dark, but like the thing that I enjoyed the most, and I loved to drink and I loved to party, and like I loved it, but I love people. So it's like, it just enhanced me to do more of that until the point it didn't. And then I was like, I want to die because I can't not do that. And I thought there was no other way to do it, even though I lived a life before alcohol, if that makes sense, and before drugs. But like, that was when I was like 12 or 13. So there's just like a long 15 to 16 year window of like living a certain way, and just fueling myself. You said like redlining for like, I don't want to say I lasted 16 years, but like there was just like these buildups and teardowns and like peaks and valleys to the most extreme, like Everest to like the Dead Sea of like emotions, physical responses, relationships, ruins, some in, some out, so there's just like a massive, massive weight lifted once that stuff started coming out. And just, again, being my authentic self and like just vomiting everything that I had felt or gone through or person. And I was able to, again, get around people that helped me kind of like focus that and break that into steps, if you will, or principles or traditions where it's like, hey, let's try to kind of like align or put these things into a place where you're not just like shooting from the hip and like and vomiting all over the place, and really just kind of figure out what works, what needs to be worked on, and then figuring out how to do that and take action. I hope does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean,
I know that was
hits,
a lot, but
yeah, but it hits home with me, and I know it'll hit home with a lot of my buddies. Like, one of the things that I look back on my life, I didn't know how to be a man because if you start drinking in your teens and then you binge drink through college and then you become a young professional and you're drinking on the weekends, you're not learning how to deal with your problems. And like for me, like being a man, and you mentioned I'm about to be a father, it's learning how to have the discipline rather than chasing the dopamine. And the discipline is, I have this problem, I'm going to face it head on, and I don't need anything or anyone to pull me in any which way to help me feel better. The thing I think that all men struggle with is we have a feeling and we tell ourselves, I'm not supposed to have this feeling. Like I'm supposed to be a man, a guy. I'm supposed to be tough.
Man up, yeah.
Man up.
Yeah.
So it's not the problem that we have the feeling, it's our response and our reaction to that feeling. When you are sober and you're clear like we are, both of us can articulate every single day we go through some type of struggle or feeling in our body where it's like, I don't like the way I feel right now. The difference though is like, I have the discipline to say, okay, 1, this feeling is normal. I'm a human being. 2, okay, if I really want to go down, like, okay, why am I having this feeling? Did I set myself up for success this morning? Did I get outside? I'll go through this checklist of things. When you are constantly inputting a substance or something in place of that feeling, you never know how to actually handle your problems. And that was the big thing for me. And what it stemmed into is like a lot of what you were talking about, redlining. And then I consider myself just somebody that got lucky. Like I was right time, right place. I always knew like what to push it to. But I don't know if it has to do with like, I've always wondered this because I could drink and like, I knew what I was doing when I was really drunk.
Wow.
Like I knew in the moment, but if I had to recollect, I would have no fucking clue.
Right.
And that was my problem because I always like, oh, I somehow got home. I somehow got to my bed. I somehow, everything worked out. So it never made me question. Now for me, when it was like, when you were like, I don't want to live, I started getting sick. So it started, I already have an illness, and then drinking for the period that I did was just making me worse. And I would hide the fact that that was making me worse. And I was like, oh, it's not that. I'll change my diet. I'll work out more. I'll do more recovery, but I'm not giving up the alcohol. And then eventually I started slowing down the alcohol, and I was like, man, I'm in so much pain. Like, I don't even know if I want to live. So I need to turn this gear into, I need to start laying new bricks. And that's where I want to take this conversation is, I feel like everybody, every single day, you're either laying a brick as a foundation for your future, or you're laying a brick as something from your past and something that's causing conflict or problems, and you don't want to deal with that.
I like that.
So because that was my life, it was justification of negative bricks. I'm laying these negative bricks, but immediately when I take some of the things away and I start focusing on like, what's just a positive brick I can stack? And then you go 5 years and then you go 10 years and you're just like, holy shit, my life is, I don't even know who I am.
Right.
Like I think back to 18-year-old me, I'm like, holy shit, that wasn't, I honestly can't even like remember because I'm me now. And I live in a new city where most people just know this version of me. They don't know that other version. So when I talk about this stuff, it's just like, they can't even fathom that like, yeah, that was me. So when you're talking about this story, it hits home so much. But what were the first negative bricks? Like you mentioned, like being 12, 13. For me, the negative bricks was we played sports. I was very athletic. And okay, we're playing sports, partying after sports.
Of course.
It's
Cul-de-sacs.
just natural.
Do you have cul-de-sacs where you grew up?
Yes.
Yeah. Basements?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Basement parties,
Yeah.
all that. It was natural. And oh man, I still remember like, okay, now I'm going to go from I'm competing on the field to I'm going to be the beer pong champ. And then it was just like this thing that just,
It's like a one
negative bricks just laid after
It's like
that.
a one up thing, right?
Yep.
You know, like
how can you go one step harder?
Like it was, you know, small town, and you know, you show up to the party with, you know, a substance, and then, you know, the next time, you know, or somebody does, and then the next time you show up with double or triple that substance, or, you know, alcohol, whatever it is, right? And like nothing hard, crazy back like in high school, but it kind of persisted into or led into discovering some more intense substances in college, and not to the later years, because again, just some of the things, like how selfish I was when, like, you know, friends that died, or tragedies that happened, and, you know, anger that was fueled, and fear at, like, you know, God, or what I understood to be something in my life. And then just like blaming that, and doing what I wanted to do, and justifying and rationalizing and bricklaying all these negative things, because like I was entitled to do it, because I was me and I worked hard, and like I deserve this because
during the daylight you were
right, and
the man,
right. But that, and you know what the crazy thing was is I let, you know, they talk a lot about in alcohol like a double life, right? I was Mr. Williams, I was a teacher, coach, mentor, doing all these cool things, and then, like, you know, at night I would bartend, or I'd, you know, work in a restaurant, and, you know, you get in with all that crew, and it's a lot of alcohol and drugs, and it's a lot of, you know, that one-upping comes back is like, how many lines can you do? How many shots are you going to do tonight? You know, how many drinks are you going to do? And like, no one tells you that that's a thing, right? No one says like, hey, this is a thing, and like, you should be doing this. It's just something that I did. And eventually it pushes people away, and people are like, dude, you're a fucking disaster.
That brings me to a question. Do you think you would have, if you were in a completely different environment, say you had started your entrepreneurial journey earlier, and would you have been a different person?
It wouldn't have happened. And this ties into something I was talking to somebody out today. It's like, how are you able to start? Because like I was full of fear. So until I think you hit some form of bottom, and that's, again, this is just my experience, and I had to hit multiple levels before starting anything, because I was too afraid. Like I had ideas and cool things like this would work and that would work, but I was too scared of what other people thought, what they were going to say, and if I wasn't going to be, you know, I was going to be liked, or is it going to be successful? Is it going to fail? Like I was scared of everything. I was fearful of everything, because again, I had gotten to that point where it's like, what does it even matter? Like I do all these cool things, and I thought I had made it at 28. I was like, I'm down in Florida driving a soft top. I got a job, and I'm coaching varsity baseball as a, you know, speed guy, like just part of this cool thing, and a fourth grade teacher, and like Mr. Williams, and blah, blah, blah. And I took it for granted, and it really didn't mean anything. And I worked so hard. And like, I look back at that now, and I'm grateful for my experiences in grad school and masters and education, and learning psychology and all these things. And, you know, it's funny. It's like, what do I do now? You know, I own a gym, I started a business, and none of that would have been possible had I not hit bottom and gotten sober. Because my point is, when you hit a bottom, right, and you reach a level where, for me, I didn't want to live anymore, anything after that doesn't seem hard, if that makes sense.
It's bonus time. Noah and I talk about this a lot.
Right.
When you're on bonus time, you're just like, fuck it. We're just going to floor it.
Yeah. And we're going to do the best that we can.
Yeah.
You know, like I had a lot of people when I came, or, you know, I didn't come up with peanut butter, right? I didn't come up with snack bars, but when I brought it out there and I was like, it's refrigerated and this, and I had a lot of people like, oh, it's stupid, a refrigerated snack bar in Florida. It's Florida, it's hot, blah, blah, blah. And like, this is before like Perfect Bar really took out. And again, I was at a place of just starting over. So I would listen to these. It was the first time I listened to somebody, unsolicited or solicited, thank them for their opinion, and just kept it moving because it made sense to me. And I felt that there was like a divine inspiration of like, hey, this is what you're going to do. And like how I got to the point of doing it, and then starting to share it and other people. And like, when you get sober, it's like you listen and you try to be aware of the universe speaking through other people, negatively or positively. And what are you going to do with that? And like, I had people in my life, like I would tell them my story, like what I just told you, that looked at me and they're like, Matt, no one fucking cares. In the way that I mean that no one cares, because they're always too busy thinking about themselves. So you might as well go do it.
And that's such a great statement. If you're getting into any business or project to make other people care, you're in it for the wrong reasons. And that's what crushes so many ideas and dreams, because you talked about judgment. Like one of the things I say to myself is like, you can't allow the judgment be your jury. Like the verdict of what other people say, whether it's yes or no, like is not real. It's not reality. All that matters is like when I wake up and when I'm putting my best foot forward and that effort, am I proud of that? Am I proud of the product I'm putting out or the service or the man that I am? Because I can't control what that person's going to think, because at the end of the day, they only care about themselves. And my expectation for them to think otherwise, that's flawed. Like if I expect you to think some way of me, that is completely flawed, because you have your own stories and your own way of life. The only thing I can do is just be my best me, and hopefully it encourages you to do the same. And like, that's how we get better in the world. And that's where I want to shout out, before we get into this next thing, like one of the things I always look on everybody's website, because I'm always looking for inspiration. And y'all put on there, we were founded on very uncomplicated notion that taking part in a community of like-minded individuals, all dedicated to constantly improving their lives and the lives of other people around them, could only make each of us stronger than we could ever be on our own. And one of our brand slogans at Thrive on Life is strive together, thrive together. So when I saw that, that's how I know, okay, we're super aligned in that. And to me, like, I want to make it very clear, like what made your defects in your story that you were telling early on in this episode, all you did was use the same defects, but just in a positive way. So if you're an outgoing person and you like to be out and you like to be friendly and you like to meet people, you just don't need the substance to actually make that happen and build a community in a positive way. And it was the same way for me when I was like, oh, I don't need to be at the bar to like be the life of the party. I can be the life of a party in the gym or in the park or at a networking event, whatever it is that I'm trying to do. And then that naturally is going to attract better people.
Right.
And I don't know the story of your wife. When did you meet her?
So before I get into that, one of the things I do want to say is, yes, those defects can be geared in a different way. But another thing, and again, you may find this or you may have not, is a lot of the times when you're on and you're living a life and you're thriving and you're doing well, if you have an off day or you have an off situation or you interact with someone that's typically not you, because maybe you're not dialed in or maybe you didn't do your protocol or your routine or your rituals that you do, it's really tough because people will then have an idea and a judgment of you. And I'm just sharing this from experience where I've lost friendships, and it gets really the circle gets smaller, and not, I don't say in a bad way, in a good way. It just does, right? Because you do things differently, and relationships will change. When I got sober, like one of the therapists that I talked to, he was like, those are called feelings, Matt. Those things that you've been denying for years. Those are emotions. Those things like that you've been stifling and like just shoving down your throat into your deepest, darkest recesses. And it's like, if you're gonna change, there's gonna be a lot of different things, and people that have perceived you a certain way for 12 to 15 years. And then when you change that, it's gonna cause them to see the change and then not like it, because they're used to either come in and rescue you, they used to come in and, take care of you, or they used to, not like you because you were who you were. And then when you change, it's like, okay. And it's not about how you say it, it's about your actions. So it's like, let's just say, it's like, again, I was sober for a period of time. I made a decision in my group, and it wasn't a popular decision. And it was something that I needed to do for myself selfishly. And that selfish behavior was in protection of my sobriety and the people that I was around. And it was seen as a negative by them. And I didn't need to explain myself. And I said, I still love you guys. I'm still here for you. I'm going this route. And I was seen as turning my back. I was seen as the person that was like not there to support, even though clearly I could look at you and say, I love you and support you. I'm here for you. How you're doing things isn't aligning with how I do things, and that's fine. You do you. I just have to do something else. And it's tough. We could do a whole podcast on that. But how I met my wife, I was a fourth grade teacher, and recess, I was outside playing Foursquare with my class, and I see this girl walk in, and one of my students was like, "Oh, that's Chelsea." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Is that like, I just didn't think of anything because I'd never seen her. And in the place that I taught, there was a lot of nannies, au pairs, drivers, people that weren't parents because the parents were usually successful, traveling, doing stuff, really nice school. And I said, oh, cool. Is that your sister? And like, girls of that age are like, why Mr. Williams? And I was like, oh, she looks like you. Is that your older sister? I don't know, and funny enough, like she went back, she's like, oh, Mr. Williams asked about you. And then like, I think it was like a couple of days later, like knock at the classroom door and like the violin that my student had forgot at home was dropped off by Chelsea. And I just kind of popped my head. I was like, hey, I'm Matt. Like, nice to meet you. I saw you the other day. Yeah, just wanted to say hi. And yeah, that's really it. And she was like, hi, nice to meet you. And then on car pickup, it was like, hey, do you want to come out? And this is before like, your own soft serve would come out, right?
Yeah.
It was like a big thing in Florida at the time. And she was like, hey, do you want to come for soft serve with the kids and I? And I said, oh, I got a coach, but like, we'll link up. And I remember I asked the headmaster, I said, hey, like, what's the deal? Like if I wanted to like ask somebody out, he's like, as long as it's not a married woman or someone that works here and they're not connected in the way that's not, their kid doesn't go here, they're not a married, like he was just like it's like common sense shit. I said, oh, okay, cool. I just, just wanted to know. And yeah, I took her out on a date. Like he said, be discreet. And we went on a date a couple towns over from where everything was. And we got to know each other and I was still drinking at the time. And we like had a drink and like we had an appetizer and like I think we like smoked a cigarette and then like watched Glee and like got high. And a month later, and I had said when I was still pretty transparent with people. And I said, like I'm moving back to New York. I'm not staying here. I want to go back. Like this isn't for me down here. And like I was like trying to go back to that familiarity of like New York City, Stamford, Connecticut, and like that triangle of like nonsense. And a month later, I was calling her when I was getting out of jail, and she picked me up and took me home and was like, hey, I'm here for you. And I was like, run the fucking other way. You're young, you're beautiful, you have your whole life ahead of you. I'm literally 28. I'm probably going to go to jail for 1 to 3 years. Definitely don't have a job. I don't even know if I walk in on Monday, they're going to allow me to teach or coach. And I'm probably not the best fit. And she stuck around. And that was in 2010. And she stuck with me when I went through treatment. I went through a treatment program summer of 2010. And we stayed together, and then we moved in with each other. I think it was like 2012. It was the first time had ever lived with a female that I was dating. I had like female roommates that were friends. And then we got married in 2015, and like she was doing her thing, and I was like starting a bunch of different things and FroPro, and was getting my life back, and just like a lot of cool shit was going on. And then she was like, "Hey, I think even though I love where I'm at, I'd really like to help you grow the business." And I was like writing shit down in like a notebook with pencil. There's a lot of things I don't know, and I'm okay to say that. And she was running a multi-million-dollar jewelry company and traveling and doing fashion shows and facilitating customer service and salespeople and manufacturing. And she's like, I think I could be of some help to you. And I was just like, you probably can, but I don't even know what it looks like. And we started in 2016. She, in a way where we said, before you leave your job, we need to make sure, because she made a really good living. And I was still trying to figure shit out. I was working at a treatment center, and I was making money and paying off debts and, staying out of prison and finishing, everything that I was supposed to be doing. I wasn't driving, but had drug tests and years of probation and all this other stuff. And we got married, and then she came on in 2016, and, just kind of like she started to experience like the highs and the lows of the peanut butter snack bar business. And, we just kind of like kept it moving. So I met her, and it was, whether it was a God-inspired moment, a universe-inspired moment, me being in South Florida as a 28-year-old alcoholic addict that was untreated, to stumbling upon one of the greatest recovery communities in the United States, in my opinion, as my brother would say, is a really, really twisted, dark, funny way for God to have set that up. and the universe to be like, how's this for a joke? Like you being here and being surrounded by people that once you were ready, were like, we're here for you. And I think that's where a lot of, again, the community and success I felt was from people being like, hey, and initially when I kind of started coming around to these groups and listening to people, I was like, man, what do you want from me? I don't have anything. I don't have any money. I don't have a car. I'm going to jail. I can't do anything for you. And they're just like, just show up tomorrow. Come back. Listen. Be a part of. We're here to help. Only want you to be okay for today. And then, if we see you tomorrow, we'll hopefully focus on tomorrow. Crazy stuff.
Yeah, thank you for running me through that story. One of the reasons I wanted you to talk about that is one of the themes I wanted to discuss here on the podcast was working with your significant other. It's not something that I get to talk about a lot. I actually don't get to talk to a lot of married people on the podcast in Austin. Like most people in their early 30s are still seeking their person in my group. And then it's something that I'm going on 5 years of marriage, and we're trying to figure out what it looks like to work together in the future, what we want to build, and something that we want to be passionate about. Anytime I get a chance and an opportunity to speak with other individuals that are already in it and learn from them is very powerful for me. And to see like that, to hear that story of she basically was what I would consider a crutch to in the beginning, is very powerful because she didn't have to be. And I consider Erin that same way in my life, where she granted me the opportunity to even like build Thrive. And we're at this position now where a long-term goal is to get her into her own situation, whether it's working with me or I'm helping her build something, which is something we're discussing behind closed doors here. But when you first started, I'd love for you to talk about your first iteration of your product, and then we'll go kind of into that, like building a team and working with other people, because there's so many people that have ideas and they just don't know how to go from idea to like, how do I actually sell this thing and exchange the product for $1? Like that's the biggest inhibitor for so many people. Mm-hmm. They don't realize necessarily that it's a lot more organic than I think they have in their mind. Yep. And it's a lot more just small little bricks like we were talking about.
Sure.
So what was the first time that you actually put a FroPro bar together? Because you were messing around with different products and trying different things and handing out different things. But I'd love to know, like, when was something like, okay, FroPro is alive and like, I'm going to hand this in exchange for $1. Where was it? What did it look like? Who was buying it? To give people kind of an idea of like, because your packaging and everything and the branding today looks fucking awesome. But I know like in any business, like if you're still around after 5 years, like you're going to have some cool stories and it's going to look much different than it did in the beginning.
2011 idea, and fortunate enough, again, like I was super afraid of what people thought. And, one of my clients and the moms was like, this is great. And she sat me down after, her kid tried it and she tried it. And I literally like whipped it up in her kitchen like I had in my own. And, she's just great. And like, what do you call this? And I was like, I don't know. It's like frozen protein. Like I put it in the freezer and like those, like, those easy bake, cookie brownie type things, and, made it. And like, she's like, cool, give me a credit card. She kind of knew my story, but she just knew I would
But okay, so this is before Instagram, really. So how did you even know peanut butter? Like, how did you know to like put it in the freezer and like get the nitty gritty?
Sitting at a job that I was fortunate enough to have through Chelsea and a family friend, and it was basically one of those things where I was sitting there. They would give me something to do. They say, you have a week to do this. I do it in 2 days, and then like I'm like, cool. What do I do for these 3? And they're like, just kind of be here. We'll like if we need you, we'll come and get you. So I would sit there and I would be available, but I would be, researching or like, and I'm not a big online guy. I can't sit at the computer. I can't sit at a desk. I'm really bad at it. So I started like selfishly, like reading about food blogs and reading about what doctors are writing, this, that, and the other thing. And, I had right out of treatment, I was working in a meal prep company before meal prep companies were big, because a guy in treatment was feeding the speed racers, the drivers, in like, these big races. And we all kind of like, they were like, hey, do you know how to cook? And like in treatment, I was like, yeah, I can throw shit together, and like, no problem. That was like 2 months. And so when I was biking around and not having a ton of money, I was like, what do I have in my pantry? I was like, I have some Metrics, protein powder, some peanut butter. I love bananas. So I was like throwing like shit in, all this shit in this and mixing it up. And like, do I bake it? I don't like heat. Like I like cold food, weirdly enough, like even leftovers cold, keep them coming. And I just started making it and just like was just eating. I was like, oh, this is good. And like, I like cold things. And I'm a big ice cream guy. Jenny's, by the way, if anybody from Jenny's, you can send me some pints because I experienced that the other night. It's delicious.
Did Noah take you or who'd you go with?
He ordered it. I was
Dude, we get ice cream after every time we eat.
It's incredible. But yeah, no, I just started doing that. And then one of the craziest things is I was kind of getting back into the fitness world, and I was like working at this treatment center and trying to figure things out, what I like to do and what I didn't. And I didn't want anybody to know it was my product. And I asked the guys who owned the gym, who I was training there, I was doing like the early 5:30 a.m. classes. And I was like, hey, do you mind if I get some feedback? I don't want anybody to know it's me, because I was still in that place of like in the first 3 years, like I was embarrassed. I didn't want anybody to like it because, oh, the poor sober kid that doesn't have any, like, oh yeah, it's really great, kid. Like thumbs up. Like, I fucking hate it. And I was watching people, like my confidence was building because people were like, oh, this is good. And like the guys didn't say anything. And then someone's like, hey, I want to eat this. And I'm plant-based. And like, she was asking questions and like, they kind of looked at me and I was like, yeah, it's fine. And I started talking to her. She's like, so what's in this? And she goes, well, do you know anything about plant-based protein? And I said, no. She goes, well, I own a juice bar, and this for juice bars are huge. She's like, can you make this with plant-based protein? I like everything else about it. I haven't tried it, but it looks great. So I went to a vitamin shop about plant-based protein, replicated it, brought it to her. She's like, this is great. Can you make me 100? And I was like,
that's awesome.
I said, oh, I don't know how to make 100. She's like, well, you figure it out. When you do, let me know. I own a juice bar. I would love to carry these for you. And I was like, okay. So I figured out how to make 100. I took I made 100, and they weren't all the same size because like the cutter thing was like, as best you could. And then one of the things was like I put them in a Glad press and seal, wrap them up, put a sticker on it. And I brought like 100 in a bag. My friends who were lawyers, like I said, hey, do I need to take a contract or? And I like walked in with like this like 13-page thing. And I was like, hey, and she kind of laughed and she's like, hey, listen, I'm just trying to help you out. Like, I'm not going to sign any of this. And I was like, okay. She's like, do you know how much this costs to make? I was like, no. She's like, well, listen, based off the size, she goes, I'm going to sell this for this. I'm going to pay you this. And when I sell them, it's just consignment. I'll pay you. And I was like, oh, okay. And I like skipped out of there as fast as I could because I didn't want her to be like, never mind, I changed my mind. And I said, yeah, let me know. Like, thank you so much. And 3 days later, she called me. She's like, I sold out of 100. Can you bring me another? And I was like, really? She's like, yeah. She goes, I put them right at the counter. It was, juice smoothie place. She's like, it's a great add-on. People see it. They add it onto their order. She's like, awesome. Point of sale. I was like, cool. Point of sale. I don't know what that means. Like, awesome. Thank you. Came in, gave her another 100. She handed me a check. I was like, huh, like, this is cool. And like, I just put it off to the side. Didn't even think of it. And then a couple days later, hey, a couple of people asked, can you do a different flavor? Like this chocolate one's really great. Can you do like a vanilla one? People like vanilla. I was like, oh, figure it out. What am I going to do? I found vanilla protein of the same protein powder I was using. I think I was using Vega at the time because like that's the only thing I knew about. And then I would bring her 50 vanilla, 50, and then she said, hey, this is going really well. You should talk to my other friend. She's opening something. Went to talk to her. Oh, I'll get 25. I started to get a little confidence. I started to get a little, like you said, organic. And like, I remember I went to one place that I like to get meals at. And I asked the guy, hey, would you sell this? He goes like, hey, I think you're a great guy, but like, get the fuck out of here. We do like legit meals. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, cool. Thanks for the opportunity. And like ran away. And like, I just kept on like getting introduced to people and like trying some different things, and juice bars were coming up and coffee houses. And the funny thing is like a couple months later, I love this. The guy was like, hey, do you still do that thing? And I'm like, oh, yeah. He's like, why? He's like, yeah, people keep coming in here and asking for it. He goes, that's you, right? Like, that's what you showed me before. And I was like, yeah. He's like, will you come by? I'd like to taste it and kind of understand. And in my head, he had a kitchen. And I was like, okay. So I went by and I was like, is this guy, again, I give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Came over and he said, this is a great product. I'll order it from you. At one point down the line, he tried to replicate the product because he wanted to do it in house, but like didn't know how to do it right. And people were like, yeah, I don't want that. I want the FroPro. Like, I know who Matt is. I like Matt and I like what he's about. I want that. And we had a lot of highs and lows. Like someone I trusted utmost faith and respect for as a man in sobriety, who allowed me to use his kitchen because I didn't want to be a bar that was made at home, because in Florida, there's so many green markets. If you do the Cottage Act, it basically says, hey, you're going to buy this product. It's made at home. And I felt it's great, but I felt like I want to be kind of more legit, right? Like I was always chasing that. I want to be better.
Yeah, if you're going to do something,
right.
Do it.
So it was like my buddy, this guy was like, hey, you can use my kitchen, but on the hours of this and this. And then those hours were, really late. And so I would go and I started making them, and I got to meet the guys that were working in the kitchen. Like I would be coming in as they were leaving. And then they were like, hey, like, if you ever need any help with this, I said, I don't know if that's okay. Ask him. Cause like, you're already here, but if you want to come in and help me. And like, I started to have somebody like help me do it. And funny enough, those guys still work for me.
Wow.
And 9 years later, they are just awesome dudes. They started when they were 18 and like 26, 27. I always tell them like every couple of months, hey, you guys are ready to do something else. They do other things.
Yeah.
And they know like, hey, dude, we're just like, they bought in, and they kind of like, regardless if we go nationwide or not, like they're there because like they believe in it. And like, it blows me away that
they are it.
They are it.
Yeah, they are it.
And
That's
like,
that's so cool.
We're doing some sampling with some other things that I do like out of their way.
Yeah.
But as we've grown, it just went from these little accounts to like getting that, that opportunity thanks to my wife. One of her camp friends, before Amazon took over Whole Foods, there was like regional places where they had all these marketings, and they, supported local. And we got this meeting by this woman being like, hey, Chelsea, long time no talk. I see this FroPro stuff around the community, and like, I see you're attached. How are you attached to this guy? And she's like, oh, that's my boyfriend, and crazy. And she's like, great to hear from you. What do you do? She's like, I run the marketing at Whole Foods in corporate at Fort Lauderdale. Why don't you come on down? And Chelsea's like, yeah, okay. Like, this is, we're wrapped in like a resealable pouch. And she goes, just come in. She goes, if anything, you learn something.
Yeah.
And we're like, cool. And we went in, and, again, when you talk about a product and you talk about starting something or something behind closed doors, and you talk about like, yeah, it's a organic peanut butter, plant-based protein, gluten-free oats, honey and cinnamon. And, we do this and this, and then you're a data guy, and it's cool. It's the story behind it, right? And there are a ton of companies out there that grew because they're either giving back or they had a mission. And it wasn't like, I didn't see this kind of bar and I created this because there was no niche. It was like, yeah, I just made this at like literally the worst part of, like literally recovering from the worst part of my life. It was an outlet for me. I didn't create it to be a business. I don't even know how I'm standing here. You guys clearly liked it. And like, at the time, I think I was like 6 years sober. And I was like, I'm just grateful to be here. And like, I hope, whatever feedback you have, we'd really like it. And like held it together, didn't break down. And like, sometimes it gets really emotional. And they got like, they tried the bar first. We were talking about the bar itself. And then we told our story. And that's when the guy was like, that's it. He goes, I can't guarantee anything, but if you do these steps within the year, you have a shot at being on the shelves, and we'll test you out at like, one of the locations. And that one location was actually 4 in Palm Beach County. And like, we sat on those 4 for a year and just demoed and met everybody. And like, Amazon came in and we're like, we're fucked. We're out of here. Amazon doesn't care about the little guy. They kept the local program. And when the dust settled, they're like, yeah, let's keep this going. Put us into Miami, put us into Dade, and then said, why don't we just go to the whole state? And it was like, we went from 4 locations to 30 locations, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it was to us. And if you know anything about Florida,
that's like you're 7Xing there. That's
right. And
a
it's
lot.
And it's exciting, but it's like, you go into one of those stores. How many brands do you see when you go to Whole Foods? Thousands.
Yeah.
You have to be there. You have to share it. And it's really cool because, it takes a lot of work. And it's like, that's what I'm doing here in Austin, right? Is essentially sharing my product with people that are giving me the chance. And whether they take the product off the shelves or not, at least I'm here and I'm talking to people about what we're doing and just reaching out, because that's the only way, right? You can hire gorgeous women to market your product if you have a product. You can hire the best marketing team. But if people aren't connecting with you and they're not connecting with the story, in my experience, and again, someone may be like, you're dumb. I don't think people are going to give a shit because it comes back to it. People don't give a shit unless it serves them or it provides a value to them. And a lot of the stories and connections that we feel like, yeah, we're a great peanut butter snack bar, but we tell a story about second chances and we connect with people in a way where it's like,
I look at it as like they have to be the ones to decide to give a shit.
right.
Like you can't tell them you should give a shit. It's more like you're telling your story and I'm like, oh, I give a shit about this product because I give a shit about Matt because I give a shit about myself who sees myself in Matt.
Right.
And that's where, I mean, it's clear as day. Like I've been through the ringer of different products and brands and stuff like that. When I see yours versus other companies, like I know what that's like, but the people at the other end that are listening to this, that's the difference between like going to Whole Foods and I give you so much credit because we literally sidebar story, but my wife and I were at our like last going out dinner last night because she's about to pop, and we go to Central Market afterwards, which is kind of like.
We're working on it.
Yeah, that like I don't know what to describe Central Market to people outside of Texas. Like
it's like even though Whole Foods is here in Texas, it's like it's similar but not.
It's almost like what Whole Foods actually should be. It's like more like there was music playing there, and like it's community oriented. It's like a community oriented Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And so we're there, and I'm like looking at we just go through and just like look at all the new products, all the health products, and I was like, man, these bars, there's just more every single time that I see them. And I just give you so much credit because it's a beast. It is an absolute beast of an industry to be in. And the only way I think you even have a shot is by storytelling, just like you are, but also by having a strong team. And that's where I'd love to kind of get close to wrapping here. And understanding a little bit about like how you've been able to, you went to the 30 stores, where are you at today? And then working with your wife, like what's the long-term goal of FroPro? Because if someone out there hears this, I'd love for somebody to connect with you and say, hey, we can help you out. So just like telling the vision of, okay, we talked a lot about like problems and how you're conquering them and things like that, but like, what's the grand vision and how are you and your wife bringing that to life?
Yeah. So currently Chelsea is the CEO. At some point, like I'm the founder, she's the CEO. And at some point you have to find the person that's going to be doing the best, that's going to be, sitting at the desk and pulling the strings and collecting and doing this and going after things. And then the other person that's out there and getting to do like the branding and the storytelling. And then someone running that like gives a shit about marketing. And we've been through a million different marketing companies and found a person. So I think you have to go through that ringer, bringing somebody on that buys into your vision and rewarding them for that, incentivizing them like, hey, like I know right now it's going to be tough and there's going to be like really hard times. And like we spent last year, a lot of hurrying up and waiting. And, our grand vision, like we went from, that first store with 100 bars. We're in about 15 states right now. We have a distribution up the East Coast. We survived the pandemic and we didn't take any money. We weren't set up properly. That's my fault, because like a lot of people got money and we didn't. And I said to Chelsea, I said, you know what, like we're doing this, like hopefully people that really need it are going to take it and get it. And a lot of people are like, you're an idiot. I'm like, well, apparently, but we survived. And a lot of the things that were set in place restarted after 3 years. So people that were kind of helping us grow went to a different role or moved to a different company, and it's like starting over again, but taking that process and saying, okay, we've had time to do these things. We've had time to fine tune what we do. We manufacture in-house. Am I open to co-packing? Sure. If there's somebody that's on here that has a manufacturing plan or a co-packing facility, I'd love to talk to you. We're looking to hire sales. We're looking to somebody that gives a shit, that not going to cut their teeth. Not that I would say no to that because I know there's a lot of motivated people out there, but somebody that already has the connections, that's done it with another brand, and a brand that, has had success. Or I'm going to use my friend's words, who's built an incredible brand. He's like, it's not what I built. It is a corporate entity that is operating in a different way, and it doesn't feel like a community or family anymore. We want to replicate that in every place that we go. And like, there's really healthy pockets all over across the United States, Austin being one of them, heading up into the Northeast and doing some things and work back there from where I grew up and came from and the West Coast. But we're just trying to focus on really growing the brand, expanding it in a way with people that are aligned, like-minded individuals that, you know, believe in what we're doing, believe in who we are, like the product, and see the vision of like really, really doing something great and helping a lot of people along the way.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to make that happen.
Appreciate it.
Flying out to Austin, Texas to continue to move that needle forward. And if you just keep doing that, you're going to win, because winning is really just outlasting. Just keep going, keep showing up. 100%. So it's exciting to see. And I just want to thank you again for having this conversation. If somebody loved what they were hearing here today and they'd love to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I do this, and some people are like, that's the weirdest thing. But my cell phone is 914-772-6343. Text or call, indicate who you are. And if you're going to call to bust my chops, that's cool too. But it's the easiest way to get me. I'm a terrible emailer. But you can also go on Facebook, look up FroPro. We are a FroPro snack bar in the United States, to be perfectly clear with that. And it's me, Matt, and Chelsea. And you can reach us via Instagram as well at FroPro Snacks. You know, you're right. There's no one answering but Chelsea and myself, or our director of marketing, Danny, who's also a fantastic addition to our team. So yeah, reach out. Again, feedback, hey, whatever you want to say, we'd love to hear it, because we like all solicited and unsolicited opinions, because it helps us grow.
Hell yeah. Last question I always ask everybody is, if you were to define the word thriving, what does it mean to you?
Putting forth, and again, I'm stealing this from someone just because I have to say that, because it's not me saying this. It was someone that said it to me, is you're every day you're in the effort business. And if you put forth maximum effort into everything that you care about, family, business, spirituality, emotional response, whatever it is, fitness, health, wellness, you truly are thriving. So if you put 100% effort, or put effort, or however you define effort, if you put effort and you're in the effort business every day, and you can lay your head on the pillow every night, I think that's the true definition of thriving in life today.
That's why I got the tattoo on my side that says, effort disgraces no man.
That's correct.
Got that when I was 20 years old, because I was struggling to figure out my path in the world. And I was just like, you know what? Like, the only thing that matters is the effort that I put in, and nobody can throw shame at that as long as I know when I put my head down at the end of the day that I put forth the effort that I intended to. So I love how that ended. I love this conversation. At the end, I always kind of give my biggest takeaway. And I tweeted, like, it had to be like 2 weeks ago, like something about turning tragedy into triumph. And I was watching one of your presentations, and you said it on the presentation. I was like, no fucking way.
Yep. And again, that's not my own thought. I'm just sharing what people that have given me their time, like turning tragedy into triumph, turning a mess into a message. Like, there's so many great one-liners. Like, the effort business is like, we're in the effort business, not the results business. I mean, you've heard them. You're a voracious reader, so you get it. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to make sure. No. That's not me. That's the share.
Yeah. I don't even know what inspired me to say that. Like, I just tweeted it out. I must have been listening to a song, or typically when I work out, I like think of these things and I just like randomly say them. But seeing that and seeing someone have said it to you, and then hearing your story here today, the reason that's the most impactful point that I kind of have as a takeaway is something that I think everybody else needs to hear. Like, no matter where you're at, there's peaks and valleys to life, but you need to make the decision. Ultimately, you need to be the person to make the decision of like, okay, if this is a valley, like, I'm going to change this into a peak. And if it's a peak, I'm going to not get too high on myself and think you're the man or the woman, and you're going to continue to put forth that effort, like Matt is talking about. Because once you hit one result, like, there's plenty of other results out there to go hit. But the reality is, like, it's just going to take you showing up and putting that effort in every single day. If you loved what you were hearing here today, please share this episode with somebody that you think this could be useful for. That's the best way that you can help us, and give us that 5-star rating and review. Until next time, this is CJ Finley with Thrive on Life podcast. Thrive on, y'all.